Can you predict the story of a game through its soundtrack? No. Well, kinda. It's impossible to get every detail of a story unless the songs literally spell it out for you. And sure, you can get emotion from instrumental tracks, but no amount of Yoko Shimomura's orchestral mastery is going to explain how Donald Duck can cast the same spell as Bahamut, one of Final Fantasy's literal gods. There are just some inherent limits to this thought experiment. Instead, let's be more precise. What I'm wondering is if vocal lyrics can be used to give me a general sense of a game's themes, something I can then extrapolate into a rough outline of the narrative. I believe video games are art, quite possibly one of the greatest syntheses of art. There's so much creativity and collaboration that goes into making a game. You've got writers, concept artists, cinematographers, 3D modelers, acting, voice acting. Yes, there's a difference, and voice acting is just as challenging to pull off. Put some damn respect on Laura Bailey's name, or so help me! Among this intricate fusion of art is music. Music that can elevate the experience just by existing in the right moment. Whether it's gut-punching tears out of you, or pushing the limits of your heart rate. Music is an integral part of the gaming experience. Music is just too goated overall, man. I feel naked whenever I don't have background music playing behind my voice in a video. Maybe that's just the Caribbean in me speaking. We tend to bring music wherever we go. I previously went through all the meaning in Devil May Cry music and showcased just how much love and attention to detail can go into song lyrics. It really made me appreciate how much value another art form can bring to storytelling. But it also got me thinking, is there a video game soundtrack out there that's so well designed that I could actually predict the story from its lyrics? Obviously, this video wouldn't work if I stuck with my precious child DMC. I've been a fan since high school and dove deep into the lore as an adult. There just isn't much left for me to cover, except for that. No, for this endeavor, I'd have to pick a soundtrack so iconic, I heard it before ever touching the game. A soundtrack with lyrics so well crafted, someone could enjoy it without knowing the original context. A soundtrack that hits so hard, it zanduts. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Who hasn't heard this banger of a soundtrack before? It's high-octane hack-and-slash goodness that transcends the test of time. He's spitting straight facts, but he's a hypocrite. Oh my god, no, he did not just say that! No! He did not just say that! Ain't no way! This game remains ever relevant for many reasons, but one of them is definitely the music. Even as someone who never played it during its maximum hype, I couldn't escape this soundtrack. Whether it was my friends in high school blasting it or the memes resurfacing almost a decade later, Metal Gear Rising always found its way back to me. Almost as if it knew that it was only a matter of time before I too would join the ranks of the poncho-clad Gatorade snatchers. Come on, come on. Got it! Gatorade. Que rico. It's the perfect game for this project. I've been listening to these songs for years, but I had absolutely zero clue what this game was actually about, only ever getting fragments through pop culture osmosis over the years. I knew Raiden was a badass cyborg who cuts through everything in front of him. But why does he cut through everything? Why does Lucia feel like a stranger who has found an even stranger war? How did this man's smile alone capture the hearts of the world, mine included? I guess you just had to smile more, Ansem. It was that simple all along.
It can't be.
These are the questions I set out to answer before having played the game live on YouTube, only using the lyrics of its vocal tracks. Is it possible to predict the story of a game by analyzing the lyrics of its soundtrack? Well, hear me out. Before we start, I just want to confess something. I have lied. You've been bamboozled from the very beginning because I added one more tool to my belt for this project: character design. Thanks to the internet, I had a list of all the main bosses, which gave me a rough idea of the plot progression since I now knew the order of the songs. That's already a huge advantage, but I quickly realized I needed to slap some reins on my imagination. Otherwise, I'd veer off into some outrageous fanfiction. Although maybe that was always inevitable for me. I put doggo because what if the story is that crazy that they took an actual real wolf and they found a way to enhance its intelligence? I needed to make sure my predictions stayed grounded within the world of Metal Gear. So I figured the best compromise was this. I allowed myself to look at a still image of each boss fight, just enough to see the character design connected to each song. And with that, the challenge became an exercise in analyzing both the lyrics and the visual design of each boss. These were the only resources I allowed myself for the sake of this challenge. Now that we've got our rules out of the way, it's time to move on to another set of rules. Specifically, the a glorious song that opens the game and sets the tone for everything that follows. Though I may have overestimated the build-up to it. First, Rules of Nature, a song about survival, right? First, what I did was try to establish like the core themes of the song. So survival instinct as a driving force of life. We got basically 4 main themes here that I have pinpointed with like the lyrics as well, so you can see what I'm talking about. Predator and prey, locked in a cycle of struggle, that's the first one. So I specifically highlight the game of life, the hunter and the agile prey, deliberately telling us, explaining us the process of the life cycle where you have predator chasing prey. Number 2, the inevitability of violence as part of nature's design. It frames this like life cycle as something that is going to be kind of like perpetual. It's something that's always going to exist, pretty much, right? So 2 lyrics, yeah, this is what nature planned, gotta follow the laws of the wild. This isn't like ordained by any person or whatever, it's just how life is. Mutual desperation between predator and prey. Something that's very interesting about the song is that it doesn't really glorify either side. It does kind of like highlight that the predator and the prey are both playing the same exact game of survival, just different roles. So a predator on the verge of death, and they run when the sun comes up refers to animals trying to escape their predators, I assume. And then the last one, nature does not guarantee victory even for the predator. Whoever survives is deemed strong. No guarantee which of them will succeed. So some interesting stuff to highlight, right? It's not really trying to glorify like being a predator. Instead, the song just kind of like highlights this is a cycle, and the cycle itself is just the rule of nature. Next comes the boss that it's paired with, which is the Metal Gear Ray, what we just witnessed. I noticed it has an animalistic design, so I wonder if that's why it got paired with this song, right? Like, which one is predator and which one is prey? Is Raiden the predator? Is the Metal Gear Ray the prey, right? It's high tech, but it's rooted in nature because it is an animalistic design. And then the next evolution in warfare. So what I was thinking with that, I have played a couple Metal Gear games. I haven't played all of them. I haven't played 4, for example, right? But from what I remember, Metal Gear is like touted as the next evolution of warfare, the next big weapon that will rival having nuclear armaments, period, right? Like this in and of itself will be like a deterrent as well. So with all of that coming together, predator and prey, evolution essentially, right? Why is it that they paired that with the Metal Gear Ray and Raiden? And that's how I got to my little summary here. Rules of Nature is about the inevitability of the natural life cycle, the relentless urge to survive. Predators and prey are locked in a perpetual chase, both driven by hunger and a primal desire to live. Only the strong may survive, but even then, there's no guarantee of success for either side. The song plays during the fight against Metal Gear Ray, an impressive feat of engineering. Despite its advanced technology, the Ray is unmistakably animalistic. It walks on 2 legs, has arms, and even a mouth. Its design is rooted in nature, and that gives the song some additional weight. The same can be said about Raiden, who is an unstoppable cyborg, yet still a man. In that sense, this fight could be interpreted as man versus nature, but there are layers to that interpretation because the Metal Gear Ray was built by humans, so in truth, it's man versus man, a conflict between human creations, framed as a primal struggle for survival between man and beast, predator versus prey. Yet both are products of science, born from human intellect, now caught in a cycle that mirrors the very laws of the wild. Basically making this next step in warfare just like a different way of expressing that natural cycle of predator and prey. And because even though it's like it looks like man versus animal, it really is man versus man technically because somebody built that. So it's like that's how I came to the conclusion in the short that human beings are also a part of this life cycle, and human beings can be either predator or prey. So I kind of like attach that meaning to the potential villains, or at the very least the mindset of the potential villains. Like maybe that's how they view life in general. My prediction, the Metal Gear Ray will likely be introduced as the latest innovation in warfare, perhaps even framed as something necessary, a tool for survival by those who built it, as if its creation were a natural evolution in the art of war. But Raiden will be stronger. Their battle, one between two weapons of war in the digital age, becomes another echo of nature's law, the inevitability of conflict and the eternal cycle of violence. The victor being the survivor and deemed strong by the rules of nature. Thus, Raiden becomes a subject of interest for the opposing forces, a threat worth watching. So I thought there was going to be so much more build-up to this boss. I didn't expect it to be the very first thing that you end up fighting. Indeed, I did not expect it to drop with zero context. Just a weapon of mass destruction popping out of the ocean, and the man with the nice accent sicking it on Raiden with a flick of the wrist. Things aren't looking good for the accuracy of my predictions. Or are they? Here came my first reckoning with this challenge. I'm not just coming into a game blind. I'm walking into an entire franchise blind. I've played the Big Boss saga using the Metal Gear Legacy Collection, but I never made it past those. It's why my first and only analysis of a Metal Gear character on this channel is Big Boss. And now I find myself at the end of the timeline, missing the context that makes this tutorial boss fight far more fitting for the song than I ever could have imagined. The Metal Gear Ray isn't unique to Revengeance. It dates back to Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. Despite the name, Ray can't launch nukes. What makes it a Metal Gear is that it was designed to fight other Metal Gears. In other words, it was meant to become the predator to older Metal Gears. Apparently, this bipedal robo manta ray was the talk of the town back in the day. A walking weapon that could take down the nuclear deterrents the franchise is named after? You know, besides a guy named Snake. Hold on, pause the video. I just want to point out how funny it is that Metal Gear fans and Kingdom Hearts fans can appreciate this image. Ray was top-tier military hardware, but no matter how advanced this tech is, it's still not exempt from the rules of nature. I knew I wasn't making wild leaps. My analysis was just picking up on themes that relate more to the context from other games. So let's grade ourselves. First, conflict between men will be framed under nature's laws of predator versus prey. This did not happen in Revengeance. However, this was correct in the older games. The Metal Gear Ray was developed as part of a rivalry between the Marines and the US Army with the intention of becoming the predator to the previous iteration of Metal Gears, Metal Gear Rex. So I didn't predict the current game, but instead the theme I picked up from Rules of Nature was explored in previous games. So, I'm still wrong, but this was a bit of a silver lining. In fact, this is kind of the trend with the rest of the predictions too. Second, Metal Gear Ray will be introduced as the latest innovation in warfare and framed as a tool for survival. The Metal Gear Ray was introduced as the latest innovation in warfare, just not in Revengeance. You could argue it was intended to be a tool for survival because within the timeline, Metal Gears fall under nuclear deterrence theory, which means these weapons are designed to be able to pose enough of a retaliatory threat that no country will mess with you. But I think this is a very loose connection that ignores the intentions of the different villains who have controlled a Ray. Besides, the challenge is to predict the story of Revengeance, so either way, this one was wrong as well. Lastly, Raiden vs Metal Gear Ray will be a fight that echoes nature's laws, predator versus prey. Raiden vs Metal Gear Ray was indeed a fight that echoes nature's laws, but I was wrong about who was the predator. This extra context from the history of the timeline makes me realize how incredible of an introduction this fight actually is. Just like how Ray originally was the predator of Metal Gears, Raiden, specifically cyborgs like him, have overtaken the spot on the food chain, rendering the Ray completely obsolete under their advanced technology. Symbolically, Raiden is dismantling the past hierarchy of power. The peak of warfare has been reduced to a mere distraction. thus setting the tone for the rest of the game, with Raiden and the Desperados being a fight amongst predators that are leagues above anything in the previous games. I imagine this introduction hits harder for fans of the series who have witnessed how important Metal Gears used to be. So, 3 out of 3 wrong. Not the strongest start to the challenge, but honestly, it's encouraging. These lyrics were clearly crafted to fit the designer's vision of the game. I may have missed the plot specifics, but the theme of predator versus prey came through loud and clear, both in the music and the boss's history within the franchise. I'm excited to see what comes next.
I just rush him. Oh.
Apparently, what followed would become one of my arch nemeses for the rest of the game. Cow legs. I don't know why it took me so long to figure out how to fight these things, but these tiptoeing, mooing boxes quite literally kicked my toned cyborg tush one too many times.
You know, I didn't realize it until now. It walks on tippy toes. I don't know what to do with that information.
But once I landed that perfect parry, they didn't stand a chance. This was the first time I truly felt how satisfying this game can be. A perfect parry into a unique execution and finishing off with a Zandatsu? My brain was bathing in dopamine, and learning that practically everything could be parried shifted my whole perspective. Instead of spending most of the time running away, I started chasing parries head on to take back control so I can finally say, a song for a character that hungers for freedom at any cost. From this banger alone, I knew I was dealing with an antagonist who had serious contempt for their captors and enough resolve to break free that I couldn't help but get hyped about the possibility of turning them into an ally. So I centered my prediction on that idea. Let's just say things didn't go quite how I envisioned it. I'm my own master now. So, the song, I suspect, is about autonomy. The core theme I gathered was rebellion against purpose and longing for freedom. Alright, so we got 3 sub-themes that make up that core theme. Desires freedom from a predetermined role. Specific lyrics include, there's no choice, but take orders to attack. I get fed, but the hunger still remains. I think the hunger is the longing for freedom, right? Because the rest of the lyrics, as we're gonna see, is about finally breaking free and leaving everything behind. So I imagine the hunger is that desire for freedom, because it doesn't make sense for it to be anything else. And then you got liberation or death. So breaking out of my pain, I'm my own master now, but I will survive somehow. Well, originally when I was listening to this song, I thought it was a person, so I thought this is a person that would prefer to be in control of their life and understands that could lead to consequences. That part about, but I will survive somehow, to me, indicates that even though they understand the consequences, they would prefer freedom. They would rather try to find a way to survive. And the last one, contempt for their captors. This person doesn't like whoever's in charge, and that's their main motivation. They just don't like them. Not content to live this way, being led by the blind, time to leave them all behind. So these are the themes, right? And then, I come to find out, it's not a guy. It's a cybernetic, or maybe a fully mechanical robot doggo. That threw my prediction for a loop there, but let's focus on the design. Animalistic design. So I thought of rules of nature again, because we have a machine of war, weaponry, right? That is, for some reason, still rooted in nature. So maybe we can bring that theme of the next step in warfare. I have Pack of Mecha Wolves there, but I don't have the lyric here. I realized that was a mistake. I should have included that lyric. But the song starts with Born to a Pack, or something close to that. So this is not the only Blade Wolf in existence, I suspect. There are others, but this one is unique because this one desires freedom. This one desires independence. Then we go to what could it be? So I wrote Doggo or AI. I put Doggo because What if the story is that crazy that they took an actual real wolf and they found a way to enhance its intelligence? So that's the more outlandish prediction, but the more probable answer is that it's a rogue AI. It's an AI that desires freedom, right? So taking all these details into consideration, I figured this is what the song is about. I'm My Own Master Now is about fighting for autonomy. It follows a character born for a specific purpose, now seeking to liberate themselves from it. Fueled by contempt for their captors, they plot their escape, fully aware that freedom will come at a cost. Still, they are determined to survive the pain. Liberation is worth it. This is the theme of LQ-84I Blade Wolf, another animalistic machine of war. The song references being part of a pack, making this one unique for its desire to break free. But why are they attacking us? If they desire to break free from their captors, then, what's going on here, right? I imagine we could be on the same side. So my prediction, continuing the theme of evolving warfare introduced in Rules of Nature, this next phase showcases a weapon not only capable of violence, but of thought. Blade Wolf may be a rogue AI or a cybernetically enhanced animal. Either way, it possesses intelligence and independence. It will lash out against Raiden as an instinct because it is on the run from its original creators. If it is a cybernetically enhanced animal, then it may mirror Raiden's own story, making them more alike than they seem, thus creating the possibility of having an ally. So, how do I say this? In storytelling, I've noticed that there is a tendency to try to include similarities between the protagonist and the antagonist that they face. Like, if there's a running theme in the story, then they typically like to draw those connections to invite us to think, to consider these characters as people who are essentially responding to their situations in a different way. That's kind of like the thought process that I had here, trying to figure out what is the point here. What are they trying to make similar between Raiden and Blade Wolf? Well, I mean, if Blade Wolf is an actual animal that got abducted and, got turned into a cyborg, I mean, that kind of mirrors Raiden's story as well, right? So maybe that's kind of like the connection. And because of that, because of Blade Wolf's desire to be free, maybe this fight doesn't end in a massacre. Maybe this fight ends with potential allyship. So that's my prediction. My prediction is that we're gonna adopt Blade Wolf, essentially. I guess I was in the wrong for getting emotionally attached to an AI dog before ever meeting it.
Not you saying I can fix him about an AI dog.
My crushed heart aside, by the time I wrapped up the second boss fight, I started to notice something. Despite sharing the title of a franchise famous for its lengthy cinematics, REVENGEANCE is much more direct. Like feasting on the electrolytes from my triples on dots in under a second, this game cuts straight to the point. Bosses barely get any screen time outside of their fights. And here I find myself making predictions that would have required way more explicit character development than REVENGEANCE had to offer. But luckily, hope was not lost, because 3 magical letters came to the rescue. DLC. Yes, my people, Blade Wolf and Just Dream Sam got their own extra story content, which gave me exactly the context I was missing. Let's go over the predictions. Alright, let's address the most important prediction here first. The idea that Blade Wolf is either like Raiden, a living organism that was heightened by bioengineering, or a rogue AI. Okay, in my defense, I've seen a giant flaming whale erupt from the sky in Metal Gear Solid 5. I figured anything's possible in this franchise. Not to mention, cyborgs wielding swords the size of buildings is all canonically taking place in 2020. So my prediction doesn't sound all that crazy anymore now, does it? But no, my people, Blade Wolf is instead an AI in the truest sense. Not ChatGPT style, where it generates speech based on calculations and is more akin to a very expressive search engine. Blade Wolf has 90 billion optic neurons, meaning its quote-unquote brain is actually capable of genuine thought. Its database is instead more like memory. Thus, it learns like a human, retaining the information it experiences and manipulating it in increasingly complex ways. Its sense of identity is rooted in the experiences it remembers. That's why it questions abstract concepts like freedom, the exact theme of this song. Now, including the rogue AI option is a bit of a cop-out because it guaranteed I'd be half right either way, so I'm disqualifying that one from the scoring. Number 2. Blade Wolf will escape from their masters and be pursued by them, making them hostile and attack Raiden on sight. I was technically right and wrong at the same time. Thanks to the Blade Wolf DLC, we got to see firsthand why he hates his captors. Originally created as a weapon to replace humans and cyborgs on the battlefield, Blade Wolf was considered a failure because he lacked the brutality that is forged from a mixture of ideology and man's killer instinct. Desperado reactivated him and kept him leashed with a range inhibitor and torture simulations, handled by a woman who gets off on tormenting AI. At first, I didn't get why that was disturbing enough to motivate an AI to fall in line, because I didn't think of the AI as alive for threats to work. But the more I thought about this dynamic, the more twisted it felt. You're given the opportunity to interact with simulated life, and your instinct is to make it suffer? You Sims players must be haunted by something. Jokes aside, the second you start seeing Blade Wolf as a real sentient being, the rest falls into place. Deeply rooted in our psychology is a desire to have control over our lives, so it makes sense for Blade Wolf to have the same desire. Like any other human being, even if he doesn't know exactly what he wants to do, he knows he wants to choose. And when Desperado threatens to wipe his memory, that's the equivalent of death. Sure, they could reboot his AI and have him relearn everything from scratch in a few years, but that wouldn't be Blade Wolf anymore. Like us, its memories are its identity. Suddenly, it's clear why our goodest of dogs started chainsawing his way to freedom with some of the most hype cinematics. So yes, Blade Wolf does escape and is pursued, just not during the main campaign, which is a bummer because a full-on boss fight between him and Raiden would have been mwah. After lamenting what could have been, we're gonna count this one as a win in terms of plot, but wrong on the when. So partial credit. Hey, I'll take it. Moving on, will they be tragically put down, or is the potential for allyship there? The answer is yes. We slice through the LQ-84i like Sephiroth did to an entire generation. But seeing as how its AI is not inherently tied to the body, Blade Wolf lives on in a new chassis that is free from the threat of an AI wipe thanks to Doctor, thus willingly joining Raiden's mission and making my heart swell with so much positivity that I'm counting this as a win. Lastly, this will make Raiden even more of a threat to who likely orchestrated the attack with Metal Gear Ray, those who built Blade Wolf. Another double-edged one here. Raiden does become more of a threat to Desperado, those behind the Metal Gear Ray attack, but they did not create Blade Wolf. They only reactivated its AI after the military abandoned the project. Right about the consequence, wrong about the source. Not bad, not great. We'll log it. But this wouldn't be the last we hear of Blade Wolf, because his DLC gave him a big baddie of his own to overcome. That means we get a unique chance to compare Blade Wolf as a protagonist to the secondary antagonist of his story, Kamsen, who probably had less screen time than Tenten, yet made every second count in the most hilarious way possible. His time may have been short, but he was a blaze whipped up by the wind, gone as fast as he came. Just like the half wind blowing. I knew this was a DLC song because it wasn't on the original list of bosses I used. So I searched Metal Gear Rising the Hot Wind Blowing boss, and the first thing I see is Blade Wolf DLC. Thankfully at the time I didn't know what that meant, so it wasn't a huge spoiler, but I did learn this song was out of order. That meant I couldn't use that trick to predict the plot. Still, I tried pulling what I could from the track itself. The Hot Wind Blowing, the struggle of a soldier. So not necessarily the struggle of this guy, who very clearly looks like a soldier, but rather I suspect this is just the struggle of soldiers in general, most likely under his command. What I picked up on is that this is talking about
the experience of a soldier, but not in the, we'll say, romantic sense that often is portrayed in maybe like movies or in like recruitment ads for the military, right? But rather a very insidious aspect of it, which is the dehumanization of soldiers. So the core theme, dehumanization through military standards. So the very first theme that I picked up on was soldiers having to obey without question. So obey without questioning the morality of their actions. You got lines like, just like the buffalo, blindly following the herd, we try to justify all the things that have occurred, waiting to heed your instruction. This song is describing the experience of like soldiers having to fall in line, essentially. So they are comparing themselves to animals that get herded. A shepherd herds the sheep, right? They have to justify things to themselves. They can't question their superiors, right? They instead have to follow blindly. But these aren't animals at the end of the day. These are human beings. They have to still grapple with their actions, with what they are told to do. And all they can do is just try to justify it to themselves. And waiting to heed your instruction is pretty straightforward. It's literally waiting to be instructed, not really acting on their own. The second part, propaganda paints destruction as freedom. This is what I mean by like that romanticized image of being a soldier. You got lines like, I don't know what I've been told, but the wishes of the people can't be controlled. Let's take this like in chunks instead of going through all of them at the same time, right? That first one is very important because that's essentially a military cadence. I think that's what it's called. Basically, it's a chant. With like those military chants, you typically have a superior who starts it off, and the other soldiers who are expected to obey, they follow along. Like they say the chant back or they finish the chant. So I don't know what I've been told is actually a very common military chant. And that second part, but the wishes of the people can't be controlled. That's a very romanticized idea of like what is expected in the military, that it's like we are fighting for freedom. So the wishes of the people can't be controlled, as in like you can't control people. It's essentially a stance against authoritarianism. And that's typically what soldiers are told that they are fighting for, right? Like you're fighting to defend freedom, to defend the concept of it, the abstract concept of it. And then with the next one, out of the ashes, the eagle rises still. I mean, come on. There is no other country that uses an eagle as the image for their military. So this is, again, that romanticized image of America that, like, we cannot be destroyed. You as a soldier are part of something that is everlasting, the idea of freedom. The next one, we fight for justice in a forgotten place. Again, it's like repeating these ideas that sell you on the idea of being a soldier, that you fight for justice in areas that have been forgotten by the rest of the world, areas that will crumble without our intervention. And then the last one, I am a wind of destruction. It kind of sounds like soldiers hyping themselves up, like saying that you are this like natural force, right? The wind is a natural element. It's like your might is everlasting. That's kind of like the idea that I'm getting from this. It feels like propaganda that is told to soldiers to kind of like justify their involvement in all this, right? Because if you don't give them something, you know, they're going to question things, right? Like they're going to question like, hey, it's kind of suspicious that we're being sent here to guard our precious oil, you know, or some bullshit like that. I don't know. Something that you'd see in like Helldivers 2. And then lastly, becoming faceless tools of a larger system. Here I am, dirty and faceless. That is pretty straightforward. Like that's as straightforward as it's gonna get. And then on my own, invisible warrior. Freedom is calling to all men who bend their will. It is describing the soldiers here as part of this larger system, but like at the cost of their individuality, right? So the first one, dirty and faceless, right? So not having like a recognizable face. But then the next one, on my own invisible warrior, right? So you are invisible to the world and even to the larger system at hand because you are expected to just fall in line. And then the last one, freedom is calling to all men who bend their will. It's like a double meaning, or at least I have a double meaning for it. In terms of this section where it says becoming faceless tools of a larger system, I fit this lyric under there too, because soldiers do have to bend their will to experience the freedom that is marketed, I guess we'll say marketed by the American government, we'll say, right? So the idea of freedom in America is you're free to work whatever you want, right? To earn wages that will allow you to live, right? To sustain yourself and maybe possibly a family, right? Like these are like ideas of like freedom. And the military gives you all that. For joining the military, you have a steady income, you have housing, you have a community, you're getting all these things that are expected with the concept of freedom. But you have to bend your will to your superiors because you're not just here to act as an individual, you're here to act as a soldier. So this is the theme of the song that I got. I don't think this is about, how do you pronounce his name again? I don't think this is about him. I don't think it's about this guy right here. But rather, I think it's about the regular grunts that Raiden faced throughout the games. This is the thought process, or this is how this man trains his units, at the very least. I think it definitely is about how this man views soldiers. So from there, we go on to the design. So it's a military man operating a mecha with a hatchet. The mecha itself, I didn't really get much info out of. The fact that it's a military man in there, I thought, this guy must be someone in a position of power. This guy must have status to be operating this special mecha. So then I thought, okay, it maybe the song is really about this man and how he is instructing all of the grunts that we would end up fighting throughout the game. The Hot Wind Blowing explores the internal conflict soldiers face between fulfilling their duty and grappling with its moral consequences. The song evokes the imagery of soldiers deployed in desert regions and burdened by the destruction they've caused. Soldiers are trained to obey without question and confront the weight of their actions in isolation. The familiar cadence, "I don't know what I've been told," is a typical chant used in the military, but here it becomes ironic. The claim that the wishes of the people can't be controlled echoes liberation, an idealistic cause that clashes with the harsh reality of military intervention. Obedience shields the soldier from moral responsibility, especially when paired with nationalistic imagery such as an eagle rising from ashes. Military action is painted as undying and righteous, even when it emerges from destruction. Yet the propaganda is sustained through soldiers losing their identities, becoming invisible tools in a larger machine. These figures move in and out of foreign lands like hot desert winds, fulfilling and disappearing, all while serving a cause that demands submission under the banner of freedom. The overwhelming might of America. The song is paired with the boss fight, Kamsen, whatever, who I assume is an American soldier piloting a mech. Alright, so remember when I said that last line had a double meaning, or at least I thought it had a double meaning? So the first meaning was like, soldiers bending their will to the idea of freedom, right? But I also think it's kind of like how this guy expects everyone else as well to react. If you submit to us, we will share our freedom with you. That's also the other meaning that I had. Like, maybe not, well, now I say it's with this guy because we've seen a little bit of him already. But at the time, I was thinking that that could be the double meaning for like how the villains in general may operate to justify their military intervention in like other parts of the world. That it's like, not oxymoron, what's the word? This contradictory statement. We will share our freedom with you if you give up your freedom, if you bend your will, and just submit to the overwhelming might of the American military. That was like the second meaning that I had for this. With that analysis being done, my prediction. I thought Raiden was gonna fight this guy. That's why I have a picture of Raiden there. This song feels like a direct window into how Kamsen operates as both a soldier and a commander. He's someone who understands how the military machine functions, especially its ability to manipulate ideology and strip identity from its troops. Kamsen is likely a superior who enforces obedience with the full knowledge of what it cost his subordinates. Because of this, Kamsen may serve as a way for understanding the enemy grunts Raiden fights throughout the game. His character might not be central to the larger plot, but he embodies the culture that turns people into weapons. So yeah, that's what I thought. Maybe we would see a little bit of like how he treats like his subordinates, right? Like I thought we could maybe get some cutscenes like that. See the propaganda firsthand. That was like my prediction. But since we're already at the fight with him and we didn't really get much in the previous cutscene, I think it's safe to say that part was wrong. I thought this was the song of some commander of the grunts you fight. So in my head, that placed him earlier in the story.
Which is technically true, since Blade Wolf's DLC happens before the main game, but I didn't include that as my prediction. Instead, I leaned on his role. I didn't get the vibe of a major villain here, more like the middle manager of a terrorist group. On stream, I even said the song wasn't really about him, but about his methods of training soldiers, which I believe is dead wrong past me. This song is absolutely about Khamsin. This is a man so hooked on freedom copium, he's turned himself into a caricature of the military. And if Blade Wolf was expected to take orders from this guy, no wonder he thinks he's being led by the blind. Prediction 1. Khamsin embodies the military machine, enforcing obedience while fully aware of how it strips identity and manipulates ideology. I'd call this prediction inconclusive. While that may be his theme, there's no evidence he's some sort of mastermind. His over-the-top delivery makes him sound genuine when he says things like, "We're bringing freedom here if it kills us," or better yet, them. So the most we can say is that he appears to be batshit insane. Most likely he's the byproduct of the very ideology his song embodies. He takes pride in being a wind of destruction because he's twisted military intervention into a romanticized crusade for freedom, while ignoring the destruction it causes. That's probably enough to get him on board with Desperado's bigger plans. But unlike later bosses, he has no personal stake beyond that. Besides rank and status, he's just another cog in the machine, happy to follow orders of the team he's a part of. A devout soldier through and through. Unfortunately, not the manipulator I had predicted. Prediction 2. Khamsin reflects the faceless grunt right in fights, embodying the culture that turns people into weapons. So this ended up being accidentally correct. Not in the way I thought, but still spot on. Originally, I believed Khamsin was the mastermind pulling strings. Turns out, it was another commander controlling both him and Blade Wolf. Blade Wolf is actually the protagonist here, and at the time, he really is a faceless grunt, just another LQ-84I, indistinguishable from the rest if it wasn't for his ability to talk. Meanwhile, Khamsin is the recognizable one. He's a wind of destruction, one of the leaders of Desperado, yet Blade Wolf is the one who truly thinks for himself. Despite having the body of a weapon, Blade Wolf, the being, isn't a weapon, though he was expected to be one. We see him trained to become another Desperado, but it never works. He isn't as deadly as they want. The trainer lists ways to spark man's killer instinct within him, ways that describe how to make the perfect soldier. Suppress emotions, absolve responsibility through obedience, adopt a fanatical belief in the cause. In other words, Khamsin. He's the perfect example of what they wanted Blade Wolf to become. A living weapon instead of an individual. But it failed. Khamsin bought into the winds of destruction, while Blade Wolf saw through them. In the end, Blade Wolf's desire for real freedom outweighed Khamsin's empty facade of it. Truly one of the big swerves of this challenge for me. I stumbled onto a W and I'm not looking back. Overall, some hits and some misses. But the song? A perfect match for Blade Wolf's arc. I'm My Own Master Now captured his entire motivation so well that I could feel deep in my heart this character wouldn't stay an enemy for long. And although the hot wind blowing belongs to Khamsin, it effectively conveys everything Blade Wolf is fighting desperately to avoid becoming. I may have stumbled a bit with my predictions here, but this only makes me more determined to explore. Is that Lucia? This is not how I expected us to reunite, but you are looking well. Better than you did in that cameo for that one show. Sadly, this isn't my homegirl lost to time. Instead, she's someone else entirely, reminding me that as a newbie in this world of Metal Gear, the song for a villain after Yoshikage Kira's heart. This song revels in the euphoria of having a newly found sense of belonging, but knowing this song belongs to an enemy recontextualizes that feeling. This isn't innocent self-care, it's a declaration of loyalty to a cause. From the moment I heard it, I knew its owner would be someone deeply invested in the antagonist's ideals. And I'm glad to say, I wasn't too far off.
And her song is A Stranger I Remain. You guys already know this. I believe this song is about finding purpose in violence. Finding a cause worth fighting for, right? That's kind of like the core theme that I found with her song. So she talks about being a drifter, right? Like a drifter in search of purpose and belonging. So I've come here from nowhere, across the unforgiving sea, drifting further and further, it's all becoming clear to me. I've finally found what I was looking for, a place where I can be without remorse, right? So she's definitely painting the picture of someone who has wandered around. And because there is mention of violence, it makes it seem like she not only is a drifter just for the sake of it, she, I suspect, has a history of violence as she drifted. A history of violence without direction, but violent winds are upon us and I can't sleep. Internal temperatures rising and all the voices won't recede. I sharpen the knife, for all of my life, a stranger I remain. So it's very interesting, the violent winds are upon us. The phrasing of that makes me think of like, her kind of like being compelled to violence rather than seeking it out, I guess. Like it's like, it sounds like circumstances, you know, when you say like violent winds, right? You think of the wind, you can't control the wind just goes wherever it goes. So if the wind is coming to you, there's no stopping it, right? So violent winds makes me think of that, like circumstances where violence will be necessary. It makes it paints this image of like aimless violence. You get what I'm saying? Internal temperatures rising, like, you know, your body gets hot, you know, when you're in a life or death scenario, right? Fight or flight. I sharpen the knife is a little self-explanatory, right? And then for all my life, a stranger I remain. So just feeling like an outcast. It really sounds like this life of constantly drifting around and having to fight kind of makes her feel like a stranger. Like no matter where she goes, she doesn't have a place to belong. And when you examine the image of the boss, again, going in without having any context as to this game, all I had was this design choice, and all I saw were hands. Hands, more hands, and then I wrote Lucia in the corner because she just reminded me of Lucia. God, I miss Lucia. I don't think I was going to get much from the design itself, other than the fact that this is like how she kills. She is equipped for war in this manner. And clearly, those arms are coming from her. Those grapple enemies, those little spider arm things that like made my blood boil. Clearly, these are from her. So she absolutely is equipped for war. With all that context, A Stranger I Remain feels like a personal reflection from a drifter, someone who's wandered from place to place, caught up in violence. This person is restless, haunted, maybe even overwhelmed by the constant pull toward conflict without a cause. Whether the voices are memories, trauma, commands, or something else, the result is the same. They're pushed to fight aimlessly. But now they are a stranger who has found an even stranger war. The drifter has finally found a cause their skills can align with, something they believe in. Their violence now has meaning. This song plays during the boss fight with Mistral, a female soldier surrounded by an unnatural number of cybernetic arms. She is built for war and now finds belonging in a cause that matches her brutality. So my prediction, Mistral is Raiden's first real glimpse into the inner workings of the enemy faction. That was clearly wrong. She's not just a hired killer, she's personally invested, a believer, a veteran of violence who has finally found purpose. I suspect this is also Raiden's first encounter with another cyborg. If a parallel is meant to be drawn, she may serve as a glimpse into Raiden's potential future, becoming a killer with conviction as he continues fighting. So that might be the one part of the prediction that we might still have a shot at, right? Earlier, we got that cutscene where Raiden was in, like, they were trying to tell Raiden that these are all contractors, right? These guys aren't really as aligned with the cause, right? Like, they're just hired hand. But Raiden says, doesn't make a difference to me. I will kill them all the same, right? So it's kind of like the first glimpse at Raiden's like ideology there. And I suspect Mistral will put that ideology to the test, right? Like, are you really just a blade for justice, or are you really just a killer with conviction? Are you truly fighting a good fight, or do you just happen to be a killer on one of the sides of this conflict?
Yeah, Mistral isn't thinking about finally finding her lovable crowd of misfits. She's ecstatic to finally drive her heels into someone's throat for a cause, not just because it's her job. Violence is her purpose, a lesson carved into her early on when she butchered those who killed her parents during the Algerian Civil War. And yet, that purpose had no direction. Her arsenal of deadly arms could tear through any opposition.
But there was no fire behind them.
Only envy for those who met her blades with something she lacked, a reason to fight. This lack of purpose was her identity for so long in a world ruled by violence, which is why you can feel the elation in her song for having finally found where she belongs. Bars. The song reveals more about this pride in violence than I initially expected. Let's look back at what I predicted before I knew the full story. Mistral will be Raiden's first real glimpse into the inner workings of the enemy faction. Technically, she wasn't. We were hit with Desperado's heavy hitters frame 1. Sundowner and Sam made things very clear about how they operate. But Mistral hinted that there might be more to this group than just the war economy. If a detached killer like her could be swayed to stake her life on this cause, then maybe there was something deeper behind it all. Her song also features French lyrics which translate to, "The heat bothers me, but it's the creaking of the boat that woke me up." The first line being a reference to the novel L'Étranger. You might recognize the name from her polearm in game, but L'Étranger influenced her character far beyond just her weapon's name. I think YouTuber Medi analyzed this lyric best. That first line is a recurring motif where the main character is bothered by the heat to the point of committing a murder, an irrational justification that parallels Mistral's former lack of personal reasoning behind her own violence after avenging her parents. She didn't have personal motivation to take life beyond that incident. She just could. So she did, as an exceptional soldier. But that second half of the lyric marks the turning point, where she's finally awakened by an ideology strong enough to stir something inside her. Armstrong isn't just a timeless meme factory. His passion was so intense it even resonated with people in my chat. There's an ideology here that makes waves strong enough to stir the heart of this woman. In that sense, she does offer the first genuine glimpse into the heart of Desperado, the Winds of Destruction, the unit's 4 captains, with Mistral being the first. So despite what I said on stream, I've successfully convinced myself this prediction was actually right. If you disagree, the comment section is right there, man. Always open. Just think of it as Mistral's open arms welcoming you. Mistral is personally invested in the cause, a veteran of violence who has finally found purpose. Well, yeah, that's the easiest slam dunk from this prediction. The song was just too well written not to catch that. I suspect this is also Raiden's first encounter with another cyborg. As I said earlier, this was wrong. At the start, we got greeted with a grin that could melt any heart. Although Sam is more human than cyborg, Sundowner was still part of that intro too, so we're still wrong. Mistral may serve as a glimpse into Raiden's potential future, becoming a killer with conviction. I was really excited for this prediction because stories always get more interesting when the antagonist reflects something buried in the protagonist. We got a taste of this with Blade Wolf, but Mistral is a far more direct comparison. Both were thrown into violence by civil war, both became legends through their talent for killing, Raiden as Jack the Ripper and the White Devil, Mistral as the Cold Wind of France. There is a shared history here that lets Mistral see through Raiden's whole Sword of Justice performance. While Raiden believes in his ideals, Mistral can spot the killer he's been trying to suppress. And that's the difference between them. Mistral may be fighting for a cause now, but she hasn't abandoned her killer instinct for it. Raiden, on the other hand, is still holding back. He's avoiding the full extent of his darker instincts. But Mistral sees it in him because she was him. And soon, the story will prove her right. Thus, making us wonder what really separates Raiden from Desperado. And leaving me happy to see that not only was this a correct prediction, but is also shaping up to be an interesting narrative to explore. Hold on now. This video is already long enough, and we still have 5 more songs to get through. But before we sign off, I need to call someone out. Myself. While I was editing this video, I took a closer look at my stream setup and realized the entire tavern was AI generated. I guess that one's on me for buying a streamer pack from the site branded as an artist marketplace and thinking it would only feature human artists. I'm not interested in using AI-generated art for the Tales Over Ale livestream. I've always preferred to hire artists. My avatar was made by Paper Larva, and the thumbnail for this video was made by Akuseru-sama. The stream is already done and recorded, so all we can do now is fully remodel the tavern for next time with art from real people. But what about the thought-provoking narrative? What dastardly villains await us next? Can we guess what they want from us? Subscribe and tune in next time to find out. There's plenty more to discover. After all, we're only on page 17 of 41!